So let's talk about the gradebook within Schoology. So whenever you come in, you can come directly into one of your courses, choose it, and in the left-hand column, we're going to select the gradebook. In this particular course, I've got multiple quarters and information, but you can always in the top section, remember when you see a drop down arrow, that means that lets you know that there's more there. So I've got different grading periods here. I'm looking specifically at third quarter right now, but that will let you know where you are. This will show me all the categories. Remember, we previously set them up in grade setup, so all the categories that we've selected will show up there. I could sort my homework assignments and my different grades by ascending or descending based on the due date or the date that they're created. And then I could choose to view specifically just particular information. So this lets me filter it down so that I could see just specific information, just the items that need grading or just the ones that are marked missing. But that gives you the ability to filter it down. So in the left column here, we'll see our students. And I can scroll and see my student list here. Okay, I'm seeing their overall grade. I'm seeing their overall grade for that quarter, and then I'm seeing specific columns and assignments. And I want to show you a couple differentiations. So as we are looking at that, this is our master overall grade book, right? So I can see here, as I hover over, remember if we hover over things in Schoology, it lets you know what that means. So it's actually giving me all the details on that particular assignment. And because that assignment is in blue, that means I've created it in my course materials, and it has materials that are linked to that. So if I actually click on the blue link, it would actually pop open another tab and take me to the actual assignment, which this one happens to have a rubric. I haven't received any from any of the students out of my 13 students. None of them turned it in yet. But I can see that information just by clicking on it. So that's a quick little hop. I can see the same thing with the sample test that I have in the next column. You notice the two other columns that I have here do not have that blue link. I can still get the information, but there's nothing to click on because what these are is a really cool tool in your gradebook. These are grading columns. So even if you are having your students do something in class that is not through Schoology, as a reminder, I still would like you to put as much into Schoology as you can. So even if you're not having them turn the assignment in through Schoology, we would create the assignment, turn off the ability for them to submit it through Schoology. But that does a couple things. It creates the upcoming grade for them over in that right column on our home page, and then it also creates a grading column for you in the gradebook. But maybe there are things like the pop quiz or extra credit that we just need to create grading columns for to track scores for things that we've done outside of Schoology. But you know, how do we do that if we don't need it to show up in the upcoming assignments? So one of the cool things in here is these three dots represent the gear wheel that you see elsewhere in Schoology. And it's just smaller for our grading gradebook purposes, the space that's there. But one of the items that we have there is bulk edit and some information, and we'll come back to that. And then we have this plus symbol. So this plus symbol area lets me add assignments, test, quiz, and discussion, just like I can in my materials index. So I could actually just create an assignment from this screen if I wished. It's not going to file it the way I want it to, but it would still let me create it and create the column in my gradebook. And as soon as my internet catches up with me, you'll see that, right? So I could create all the same things. And again, if I didn't want my students to submit it, I would just turn off submissions enabled. So that's one of the options. But how we got these grading columns, this plus symbol gives me the ability to add a grading column. So what you'll see is that looks just like when you're adding an assignment. I can give it a name. I could say, again, pop quiz, anything like that, participation points. But you see here, it doesn't let me put it into the calendar because this item's not going to go into that calendar or in the upcoming homework feed. We would give it the appropriate point value, and then we would give it the category. This one's participation. And I can say whether it's published to students or not. Obviously, we kind of want this to be published to students, and we create. So now it's just created a column in my gradebook for me to record points. So that's really cool for me to be able to do very quickly and record my points. What other things can we do in our gradebook? I mentioned that you have the ability in this upper right-hand section to have some options here. So we can export grades out into like an Excel file if we wanted to. We could print some reports. But the really important thing here is your bulk edit. And this is really helpful too. We'll talk about it when we talk about saving your courses, but when you bring your course back in for the year and then that you used last year, and it brings that shell back in, and then we set up all our grade setups, you can actually come into bulk edit at any time throughout the year. And any assignments that you have already created in the system are going to show up here. And even if you don't have them activated yet, this is whether it's published or not. Even if I didn't have that published, I could click publish it. If I had another assignment like here, I have a field trip permission slip, it's showing ungraded. If I wanted to give it a category in this screen and say, okay, well, maybe that's homework, and I think it's going to be due on 8/23/17, I can do that. So I can assign it the category and the due date, and I could assign it the grading period if I wanted of when that's particularly due. So any of these assignments, you can come into one place and either change and edit that information instead of going into your folders to find it. You can actually change it all in this bulk edit section. One reminder is anytime you make those major changes, always scroll all the way to the bottom and click Save Changes in order for them to take. But that's a really quick way to be able to go into your gradebook and then be able to do the editing that you want. So I'm going to go back. We're going to go back into our gradebook. And I'm going to go back. Now it's popped me into the current grading period. That's why I'm only seeing that field trip permission slip. So if you ever just see certain things but not others, that's where you want to see. It's always going to populate you into the current grading period. But if I wanted to go back to a different grading period, I certainly could do that. So those are some great ways to manage this gradebook and to be able to pull that data and information in. And you'll notice here I can submit and put grades in here. Now this particular one happens to be a test, so if I click on it, it's saying, hey, this test doesn't have any point value, so it's not going to let me override. But if it were a normal test that had that it was a live active test, which I haven't activated this one yet, then I could go and enter grades. You can see here, this is a rubric, so I could just simply select the rubric scores, and it then puts my score in, and it will override that or change the point value. Now, let's say Jennifer Aniston in this case was absent the day that we did that assignment and I wanted to excuse her or something. You can hover over any of those gradebook fields, and I see this little flag, and there are my exceptions that I can give. So I could certainly excuse her from that assignment, and when you see that happens, it does not count for or against her. If I mark it as incomplete, it still does not count for or against the student, but it allows them time to turn it in, and I'm not having it count against their overall grade. But if I choose to mark it as missing, it will give it a 0, and you see that her grade is now affected because that 16 points is not going towards her score. So these exceptions are really cool and really helpful. Now, to take that missing away, I just select it again and it goes away. Now, if I wanted to give Jennifer a point value, I could come in here and I could actually even override the rubric. And if she just didn't do it and I wanted to show that she hasn't done it yet, I could either mark it as missing or I could just give it a 0 point value. So one thing I would tell you is please don't leave these fields blank. Unless, and that's a key piece, I'm going to delete all these out so I can get that back to a no score. Most of the time I tell students that if it's blank, that means I haven't graded it yet, so just give me some time. But for teachers, I recommend that you do mark it with one of the exceptions. Like if it's truly missing or incomplete, mark it as that, because then it will show up in their gradebook this way as well. And then when they get their report of what's overdue or missing, or their parents get that weekly digest, that will send that notification to them that they haven't done that. Okay, so that's one of the things. I can also leave a gradebook comment, and you can see this little speech bubble comes up, and I can hover over it and I can click and I can say turn in tomorrow for half credit. Okay, and I can display that comment to the student, and now that comment's there. And so Jennifer, she would see that up in her notifications. This is certainly mine, but it would show up here in her notifications saying, Mrs. Lurs has left you a gradebook comment, and she would be able to see the comment. So that's a good way to be able to communicate that information about the grades or about homework assignments to your student. You certainly could message them directly as well, but we can mark exceptions in here, and we could leave gradebook comments. You can leave a comment in any of these as well. And it's just a note for you in your gradebook. And as long as you do not display it to student, then only you see it. The student doesn't see it. And it's just kind of your little reminder of what's going on in that particular category. So that's a really helpful tool as well. So we've kind of gone over the overview. We've talked about marking exceptions. We've talked about comments. We've talked about adding grading columns and bulk editing. So there's a lot of great options in here. The one thing I didn't talk to you about is the 3 dots under each grading column. And there are options there as well. So you can see that I could go in and I could edit that column that I created, or I could go back and edit an assignment. I could track revisions. I can set all grades. So let's say everyone in my class participated in an activity today, and I wanted to give everyone 25 points. You could just simply say, set all grades, give them 25 points, and confirm. And maybe little Georgie Bush really didn't participate, or I needed to give him an exception and say he was excused. And Billy Clinton, he didn't do so well, so I'm only going to give him 10 points. You can then go override individual scores, but that allows me the ability to do something in a very quick fashion. I can also choose to mark any empty cells as incomplete or excused or as missing, and I can view statistics on any of these particular columns on how my students did in that particular area. So there's a lot of options within your gradebook that gives you a lot of information. Okay, so the last thing I would point out to you is in your gradebook, what if we want to look at one particular student and not just a column this way and how they're doing, but how they're doing as an overall. I just wanted to maybe look at Jennifer Aniston because she's got a few more grades. So the little graph to the right of the student's name, not their name themselves, but the graph to the right of their name, if you click on that, that is going to bring up that student's kind of grade report, if you will, within Schoology. And you can always toggle any of these things open to see more. And I can see where I have these little lines that maybe there's not particular information in there. And as I toggle even homework open, you can see that we've got some extra points or what's missing, or if there's gradebook comments or things like that. So we can pull up that student's whole report and see what they've done. And you can see I still have these blue links. So if I needed to click and go look at this particular assignment, I could click on that and go look at her particular original assignment and see what's going on. So if I needed to have that discussion with the student and look at their overall grades, I can do that right within Schoology. We'll talk later in a later grading area about how all these grades feed back to your student information system and send all this data back as well. But you can always come into your gradebook to view that information and see what they're doing and what's going on. So again, our gradebook is a very great in-depth multifunctional tool that lets me see a particular grading period, their overall grades. It lets me manage individual grades for assignments or just particular grades that I'm giving to them. It lets me add as well, and it lets me do some quick bulk editing in a screen to make it really useful for you as the instructor to quickly and easily enter data just once, and then you're able to access it here. Your students will be able to see their own individual grades, parents would be able to see that, and then again, you can see a grading report, and then ultimately this will feed back to your student information system for you. So that is going to be a great tool. Just take some time and explore and see what's available to you in this gradebook as you go out throughout the year. And it's going to be very easy and very helpful for you to manage.